7 days. It was 7 days from the day that I found out what happened to my dad until he passed. It's Tuesday, October 5th, and I had the pleasure of speaking to some of my colleagues at Lipscomb University. And I came off the stage to find emergency text from my brother saying that Dad was in the hospital. That Thursday, I jumped on a plane to be with him and my family. And by the next Thursday, I was back teaching, except this time without the benefit of knowing that I could. Without the benefit of knowing that I could pick up the phone to call my dad whenever I wanted. That Thursday, I was back at the university. Some of my students asked me to come watch them play in a baseball game that they were competing in at the time. And so I did. And as I found myself in the back row of the stands, I was pondering how to grieve appropriately and still move forward in a way that would honor my father. And a couple innings into the game, a fellow colleague of mine, who I hadn't seen since I'd returned, sat down next to me and expressed his sympathies over my dad. And it was the next thing that he said that forever changed me. He said, "Tell me about him." 4 words, just 4 simple words that challenged me so profoundly from this man that I wasn't that close with and had never met my dad, but wanted to know more about him. And so it's those 4 words that challenged me, that have caused me to think about 4 words that describe my dad that I want to be able to share with you in the next 4 minutes. The first word is disciplined. Anyone that knows Dad knows his routine. He would get up before any of us, run through vigorous calisthenics, cut mounds of fruit on a plate, gather a variety of twigs and berries and forest nuts and things in a cereal bowl. Then he would leave for about a half an hour to brush his teeth, which involved all sorts of machines that I'm going to blame on Uncle Sherwin and other insidious devices I'd never seen before. We'd then leave for the day to either play tennis or swim at the JCC or play ping pong. He'd then have lunch at one of his regular haunts that he would frequent. We'd come home and watch the nightly news and Jeopardy and settle down with a cup of green tea and a bowl of popcorn for the night. This was one of his qualities that probably drove me nuts the most as a young child, that he really impressed upon me, whether it was checking in with me every day to see if I'd read a page of the dictionary, to asking me to wear my hair in a French braid because he thought that was a very smart hairstyle, to us listening to the Beach Boys or Jackie Mason tapes on the way home from the airport when he would pick me up, because those were the only 2 things we could agree upon. But while it was one of the most frustrating qualities as a child, it's one of the qualities that I most hope to emulate now. But as disciplined as he was also driven. He didn't accept anyone's timeline. He didn't accept anyone's benchmark. He didn't only raise the bar, he set his own bar. And he taught me never to accept no for an answer, especially if it came to haggling on a price or a deal that he didn't see at the time. And he taught me also to create my own opportunities. So he was disciplined, he was driven, but he was also determined. As I was interviewing him for my book that came out, I learned about the jobs that he held from the time he was 8 until he worked his way through law school. He didn't let anything stand in his way, and it was interesting how even when he had various illnesses over the years, if a doctor told him it's going to take you about a month to recover, he said, "No, it won't." And he was determined to be better in a week. He said, "You can't walk on this for a week." He was up around the hospital the next day. So he was very set on making sure that he set his own timeline in whatever he did. And finally, he was dedicated and he was dependable. I know that's 2 words, I had to fit them both into my last one. But it tells about who he was. He was loyal as a friend, as a coworker. Someone gave him a job to do, he would get it done. I was just talking with some of you that were here, and if you casually mentioned to Dad that you were looking to buy something, you would get a full report the next day, complete with consumer reports, reviews, complete with links on where to buy. So I learned to be very careful about what I said to my dad and when I said it. And so it's interesting to watch that kind of black and white nature again that sometimes drove me nuts, but as I've grown older, it helped him to become one of my most consistent relationships because I always knew where I stood with my dad. One of his friends, Victor Goulet, emailed me after he passed, and I quote him, and he says, "Thoughtful feelings are easily felt, and kind words are easily said when I think about your father, my friend." So as I conclude today, I go back to my students at Lipscomb, where I've had the pleasure of listening to their speeches. I've given them the task of giving a personal testimony or a family history, where they had to tell me about a moment or a person that's shaped them to become who they are today. And several of them have talked about there's only 2 days that are guaranteed in our life, the day we're born and the day we die. The rest is represented by a dash, and it's up to us with what we do about that dash. You know, God doesn't judge us based on what we're given, but on what we do with what we're given. And so as I challenge you today, I hope that it's not just a passive appreciation of my father, but it's an active understanding of who he was, but how we can honor him by moving forward. The first sermon that I came back to at my church was a series called Now or Never. Ironic for the timing. And my pastor said, I'll have to read this here, "Someday is probably the most dangerous word in the English language. If what matters at the end of your life doesn't matter now, then your priorities are misaligned." So all we can do to honor my dad is to live each day like it was our last. It will always be my opinion that my dad left this earth too soon. I shared with a couple of you, I kind of expected him to kind of fall off a mountain into lava, or get hit by a rapid train in Japan, the superhero that he was. But with these qualities, he was disciplined, driven, determined, and dedicated. I pray that will help you remember him, help you consider your 4 words that you would determine your life to be by, and remember that even though we won't be getting the onslaught of email forwards and mini origami, that we can help his life live on through those 4 words. Thank you.